like superfood, and it is absolutely delicious. I started making it at home around 6 months ago. I was absolutely shocked at how easy it can be to make. When I approach something new in the kitchen, I'm a person who will research and reference various sources before attempting to make it the first time myself. Through my research into sauerkraut, I kept coming back to the same thought process, which was, why does this seem so complicated if people were doing it in ancient times? They did not have fancy equipment, they did not have fancy kitchen scales. They basically were just working with what they had, which is the approach I like to take in the kitchen, using the bare minimum amount of things as possible to make it as easy as possible. This is something that's been done basically since the beginning of recorded human history. When I looked into this, I found out that the earliest evidence of fermentation as a whole, so with dairy, is actually found in 10,000 BCE in Northern Africa and the Middle East. Sauerkraut specifically, despite its Germanic roots, was actually first created in ancient China around 2,000 years ago. It was found that Chinese laborers that were building the Great Wall of China were actually putting cabbage into containers and covering it with rice wine in order to preserve it through their harsh winters. It's believed that Genghis Khan brought it to Europe, where the rice wine was eventually swapped for salt, which creates the current version of sauerkraut that we eat today in America. I'm telling you all of this not to give you a history lesson, but to remind you that when you're approaching an ancient technique in the kitchen, it's going to be extremely helpful to set aside the bullshit of modern thinking and return to the true basics of the task at hand. In this case, that's going to be done with making sauerkraut. What you see here are your bare minimum supplies. You of course need a head of cabbage. You also need a high quality salt. This is Redmond's real salt, never use iodized. You need a kitchen scale and a large bowl. If you don't have a kitchen scale, just make sure you pay attention to how much your head of cabbage weighs at the grocery store. You're also going to need a measuring spoon. This is a tablespoon, but you could have a teaspoon as well. If you're able to invest a little, you can get these glass weights on Amazon for around $10. At least that's what they cost when I purchased them. It does come with a set of 4, which should be about enough for a wide mouth jar of this size to fit in. This is like a 3.5 pound cabbage. That should be enough for that, but if it's not, you just have a little extra cabbage, you can cook it up with dinner that night. If you don't want to go that route and you just want to go big or go home, this is called a sauerkraut crock. So my husband bought this for me. It has a lid with a little channel here. This is where you'll add a little bit of salt water and it creates a seal. And they usually come with, they do come with their own weights, but mine are not in there right now. I do want to make note that the purpose of these weights are to keep the cabbage below the level of brine. This is to ensure an oxygen-free environment, and it's something you can get creative with. Some ideas that came to mind for me were using a river rock or a smaller jar that can fit inside your larger jar filled with water. Just be sure that if you do use an alternative method and decide to take the route of creativity, that you make sure the items you're using are extremely clean. You don't want to introduce mold or bacteria into this environment. So the first thing you're going to want to do is remove these outer leaves of your head of cabbage. They generally will just kind of peel right off. This one is of course making me look like a liar, but it doesn't really matter. You're probably only going to use one of them, and you will see why later. Once you've removed those outer leaves, you're next going to want to put it on your kitchen scale and measure its weight. If you don't have a kitchen scale, again, just pay attention to how much it weighs when you're at the grocery store. This is going to determine how much salt that you're using in your mixture. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I did this, I totally eyeballed it. It came out delicious and I didn't die. I just had to remind myself that people were doing this 2,000 years ago, so surely I can do it too. Next, you're gonna wanna give a quick rinse, and then you will immediately follow up with patting it dry. Next, we're gonna begin shredding the cabbage. So you're gonna wanna start by cutting off, putting a little strength into it, cutting off this end of it and kind of setting it aside. I then like to quarter mine in order to remove the core. If you have another way of doing it, that's fine too. This is like I said, this should be very easy, nothing to stress about. I just think purple cabbage is so beautiful. When you slice it, you're gonna wanna try and get it as thin as possible, but don't stress too much about this. I have both sliced it too thin and too thick, and both batches came out fine. This was such a huge head of cabbage that I actually switched it out for a giant stock pot, which is totally fine. You just need a container to massage the cabbage in. Now that my cabbage has been shredded and it is ready for the next step, I'm going to go ahead and add my salt. So since it was 3.17 pounds, I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons. I think it's always a safe bet to go more salt than less salt. Plus, this salt is amazing. This is not an ad. I just love this salt. You should look them up if you haven't tried it before. It's got the most beautiful color and you can see the minerals in it. So I'm gonna add my 2 tablespoons, kind of distribute it evenly, and now I'll begin massaging. So when you're massaging your sauerkraut, it is exactly what it sounds like. I have seen people do it different ways, and it does take about 8 to 10 minutes. This is probably the longest part of the process, but it's absolutely essential to creating the brine. This is how the brine is created. There's really no wrong way to massage the cabbage. You just need to be sure that there's brine at the bottom of the bowl when you're finished. I use this funnel to try and limit the amount of cabbage that hits the top rim of the sauerkraut crock, but it's absolutely not necessary. You can totally push it down with a spoon or the muddler. So I'm just gonna do a couple of handfuls. And then I will remove the funnel and take my handy muddler. You can see it's down in there. I don't want to tilt it too much. And I'm gonna push it down. This is making sure it's compact as possible so that when you add the brine, everything is covered. And you know what? I'm just gonna use my fist as well. Really smush it in there. Okay. For the purposes of this video, I'm also going to be doing a batch in this wide mouth jar. So I'm going to put some in there. This is just to show you exactly how easy it can be. You don't need this fancy crock. This was a gift and I love it. It's awesome, but you don't need it. You can see exactly how compressed it gets when you push it down in there. Okay, I'm gonna add some more. Of course, when you're doing this, make sure your hands are clean. I wash them multiple times throughout this process. You want to leave enough space at the top for your weight, which I might have even, honestly, I think I overfilled this a little bit. So I'm actually going to remove some. This will go into my crock over here. But normally if you're just using jars, you can either use a larger jar or you can fill up multiple jars, of course. Okay. You can kind of see the juices in there, but you do need the brine to be above the level of the cabbage. So what I'll be doing is I will be dumping some of this brine into here. But first, I'm going to continue filling this so that all of the cabbage is out of this pot. So you're gonna wanna remove any little bits. For food and safety purposes, I should note that having it below the brine line is the standard. My last batch, I was unsuccessful with that unknowingly, and I ate it anyways and I lived. I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm telling you that I lived. So, it's just good to know. Again, not telling you to do that. This is where your cabbage leaf really comes in handy. And you're going to take your weight and squish everything down. And there you have it. This jar is now safe to sit on the countertop, and I'll add a lid to it. And I'm actually interested to see it done this way again because it's really fun to watch the bubbles come up. I did want to show the color difference. This is a sauerkraut I finished about 2 weeks ago, and this is the one that we just made together. You can see the color difference. This one's a lot pinker and lighter and brighter, and this one's really dark purple. So now that you've gotten an awesome forearm workout, massaging your cabbage and putting it into the jars, making sure the brine is covering everything, you just sit and wait. So in the first 1 to 3 days, you might see some bubbles beginning to form and the brine might become a little bit cloudy. This is totally normal. Just be sure to burp it if it's in a jar, probably daily, if not a little bit longer than that. That's only if it's sealed really tightly. From day 4 to like about day 7, you might notice a color change if you're using purple cabbage like me, or maybe just in general. Can't speak too much to that because I've only used green cabbage once when making sauerkraut. You could go ahead and eat it at this point, honestly, but I would recommend waiting until the full 2-week mark to receive the maximal probiotic benefit. I also find that the flavor and texture are best after about 2 weeks. I wanted to give a couple of troubleshooting tips. So if you see scum, which is a kind of white, filmy layer, it's called comm yeast, it'll form on the surface, don't panic, just skim it off the top. It should smell kind of soury and funky. If you know of sourdough, if you use sourdough starter, you might be kind of familiar with comm yeast. If it smells like it's absolutely rotting or like sulfur, you should totally toss it. This is not common, but it does happen. So you probably didn't use enough salt. It's time to toss and start over. A second troubleshooting tip is if you have been massaging and really working with your cabbage and you still just can't get enough brine in the bottom of your bowl. This is something that happens. It can happen if the cabbage is kind of old or if it sat in the refrigerator too long and it's lost moisture content. That's where the brine comes from, is the moisture within the cabbage. The salt draws it out through osmosis, I think. Either way, if you're struggling, there are a couple things you can do. One of the things is you can leave it and let it sit and let the salt do its job for a minute and see if it gets a little bit better, do some more massaging. I have also tried, I don't know if this is frowned upon, but I've tried it and it worked. I have added about a teaspoon of salt to a cup of warm water and made sure it was mixed really well and added that into the brine, and I had great success with it. My sauerkraut was fine. I eat it every day. I have zero digestive issues. Not giving advice, but it has worked for me personally. One could say that sauerkraut is just cabbage, salt, and your time. But if you're standing in your kitchen and you're moving to the rhythm of a song that you love, it really becomes so much more than that. There is an exchange of energy that happens when you use your own two hands to create food. You aren't just breaking down cell walls, you're infusing that food with your intention. In a world where things are becoming increasingly sterile and mechanical food production is as steady as ever, I believe that handmade food really carries a resonance that I don't believe a machine could ever replicate. When we cook with love and we are present, we are more observant. We notice texture. With sauerkraut, we adjust the salt by how it feels in our hands when we're crushing it. We wait for that perfect moment to say, okay, this is ready, this is done. Beyond the physical experience of it all, many believe that water, which is the base of this brine in this fermentation process, is actually a carrier of frequency. Your sauerkraut is a living, breathing biology. It is listening to the environment of your home. It is using the bacteria of your home to ferment. It's truly just amazing. It's why it tastes better. You're not just tasting fermentation, you're tasting a piece of your afternoon. You're tasting the energy that you put into that food. It might sound woo-woo, but I don't care because the evidence is in the experience. And when you put love into food, you get life back out of it. So I hope you make sauerkraut. Eat well, stay wild, keep questioning things, keep finding meaning in the mundane. Until next time.